The concept of freedom is something that everybody, everywhere in the world, holds dear. But it was clear to me that many people didn't understand what was really meant by freedom. They didn't understand that one person's freedom is related very much to another's. What one person could do can restrict the freedom of others. It was also clear to me that, particularly in the right in the United States, this misunderstanding has had profound effects. We see the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party actually promoting policies, actions, which would reduce the freedom of large fractions of Americans. So I wrote the book to help clarify the idea of freedom and what kinds of policies, what kind of economy would best advance the freedom in a meaningful sense of most people. A central idea in the book is to explore how, in a whole variety of contexts, one person's freedom encroaches on that of another. If somebody pollutes, it endangers our whole world. It may result in somebody with asthma dying. So the freedom of one has caused a loss of freedom in a very fundamental sense to others. We have to have discussions on how you balance those freedoms. It's pretty clear to me that any rational society would want to restrict unnecessary pollution so other people, taking away the right to pollute, but the right to live is more important than the right to pollute. And after one has a democratic dialogue on that balancing, you need to have rules and regulations. That's where government comes in, to say, you are encroaching on the freedom of somebody else, and you can't do that. It's obviously important that citizens believe that the rules are fair and fairly enforced. And quite honestly, we face a problem today because there's been a loss of trust in government. But it's a loss of trust in government that's been, to at least a significant extent, advanced by those who want to decrease the role of government. The polluters don't like the restrictions on polluting. So one of the purposes of the book is to try to enhance the understanding of why we must have these regulations. The Ten Commandments was a set of regulations, and we've lived with that for thousands of years. So to understand why it is that every civilization needs a set of rules and a government to enforce them, and that modern societies based in democracy have democratic ways of adopting them, fair ways, rule of law. And so if we can understand both why we need it and why there are special interests trying to stop, to undermine government, maybe we can restore trust in government. The title of the book, The Road to Freedom, is a little bit of a riff off of a very famous book written in 1944 by another Nobel Prize winning economist, Friedrich Hayek, who in the aftermath of the Great Depression, which had led to the realization that government could help society, the economy grow and make these kinds of depressions a thing of the past. And with the growth of the welfare state that provided health care and social protection, he was worried that this growth in the role of government would lead to subservience. He called it the road to serfdom. Now we've seen 80 years of what's happened. And what we see is the growth of populist totalitarianism, authoritarianism, not in countries where the government has done too much, but where the government has done too little. He got it 180 degrees wrong. And my book is to try to explain why he got it so wrong. In the book, I not only try to explain the meaning of freedom but I also try to suggest how we can create a better society, a better economy, what I call a progressive economy, and that naturally leads to the question, can we achieve that in the current political environment? When I talk to young people here at Columbia, other places, when I talk actually to Americans across the spectrum and those in other countries, the policies that I've been advocating are policies that I think a large majority of people support. Most people don't want the earth to boil over and worried about climate change, and especially the young. Most people don't want the spread of infectious diseases. They want, when there's a epidemic, the government to do something. When there's a natural disaster, they want the government to do something. When there are monopolies, they want the government to do something. And they worry about the concentration of excess power associated with excess wealth. They worry about tax avoiders. And they think we ought to have a fair tax system where those who are rich and are more able to pay ought to pay a fair share in their taxation. And so too for the rich multinational corporations who've done a fantastic job in avoiding taxation. When you talk about it on the individual policies, there is widespread support. There is some misunderstanding in various parts of the world, country, about what makes for good economics. As an economics teacher, part of my job is to try to explain what makes for a good economy. We are, for instance, a knowledge-based economy. America's strength is its technological strength. Where does knowledge come from? It comes from universities. What gives me hope, even in these very difficult circumstances, maybe we'll learn a lesson from them. And since I think there are shared aspirations, if we understand how we can better accomplish those shared aspirations, I think there's really a common cause here. And I think that common cause will lead in the direction of the kind of progressive capitalism that I outline in my book. One of the things I try to do in my book, The Road to Freedom, is to explain that Adam Smith, who is often thought of as the father of modern economics, was much more attuned to my perspective on economics and society than to the free marketeers who have been claiming him as their hero, just like they claim freedom for themselves. They didn't understand freedom, and unfortunately, they all didn't understand Adam Smith. Now, what Adam Smith did talk about was that markets have forces at play that lead to efficiency and the well-being of society, but he was also aware that there are many other forces going the other direction. So, I as an economist understand the importance of incentives and the forces that make for how the private sector can play an important role in the economy, but there are limits. And he was very aware of those limits, and I try to highlight that in the book. One of the important areas where government regulation is needed is to make sure you have competition. We all know about monopolies and how they can have the power to raise prices. And Adam Smith was very clear that he said something like people of business seldom get together without conspiring against the public interest to raise prices. He also discussed how they got together to depress wages. And he actually supported the idea of unions as a way of workers getting together to balance the power a little bit better. He clearly understood the role of government for promoting education and that there was important role more broadly, as I said, in regulation. Of course, he was living in a very simple economy. It was before the Industrial Revolution, but it's still interesting, his wisdom. A modern economy, you need regulations about pollution, you need government investment in basic R&D, you need so much, government has to take on a much larger role than in the simple agrarian, limited commercial economy of 1776. What I put forward in the book is a vision of progressive capitalism reflects the need that Adam Smith talked about for good regulation, where one person's freedom encroaches that of another. But it goes beyond that. It recognizes that you need, in a modern economy, a rich array of institutional arrangements.